My husband's mother dumped an entire plate of food on my head while the whole family laughed. They thought they had broken me, but none of them knew just 3 hours earlier, my life had changed forever.
The family called me worthless, but they had no idea my late father had secretly left me control of a $50 billion empire. And his final letter, instead of crying, I smiled, took off my wedding ring, and walked away. They thought they had won that night, but they were about to discover who they had really humiliated.
The night my mother-in-law dumped an entire plate of food over my head, everyone at that table laughed. Every single one of them. Not one person stood up. Not even my husband. What none of them knew was that less than 3 hours earlier, I had received a phone call that would change my life forever. I wasn't the helpless woman they believed I was anymore. And before that night was over, I would learn that the food on my dress wasn't the worst stain my husband's family had left on my life. It was the lies. Some stories don't begin with betrayal. They begin with years of pretending everything is fine. If you've ever stayed quiet just to keep the peace, you'll understand exactly how this feels. And if this story stays with you after it's over, tell me where you're watching from. I'd genuinely love to know. Now, let me tell you about the night silence finally stopped, protecting everyone except me. My name is Naomi Carter. I'm 32 years old, born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. I teach music at an elementary school where children still believe every song can fix a broken day. Maybe that's why I stayed hopeful for so long. Music had always taught me that every difficult note eventually finds harmony. Real life wasn't nearly as generous. I met my husband, Brandon Williams, 8 years earlier at a community charity event. He was charming, funny, the kind of man who remembered people's birthdays without checking Facebook. He volunteered every Saturday, wore neatly pressed shirts even on weekends, and called his grandmother every Sunday afternoon. Everyone adored him, including me. When he proposed beneath the giant oak trees at Piedmont Park, I honestly believed I had found the safest place in the world. What I didn't realize was that I had only fallen in love with Brandon. Marriage meant joining his entire family. And that's where my real battle began. Brandon's mother, Lorraine Williams, ruled her family like a queen who had never accepted democracy. Nothing happened without her approval. Not birthdays, not vacations, not baby names, not Thanksgiving menus. She decided everything. The first time I met her, she smiled politely. Too politely. She hugged me without warmth and whispered into my ear, "So, you're the music teacher." It wasn't a question. It sounded like a diagnosis. I laughed nervously. Yes. She nodded. I imagined Brandon marrying someone more established. That single sentence followed me for years. Whenever I bought a dress, she would ask if it came from the clearance rack. Whenever I cooked, she compared it to another woman Brandon once dated. Whenever Brandon praised my kindness, she reminded everyone that kindness doesn't pay mortgages. At first, I thought she simply needed time. People always say difficult mothers-in-law soften eventually. Mine only became more creative. Sunday dinners were mandatory. Missing one wasn't considered an absence. It was treated like betrayal. Every Sunday at 6 sharp, the entire Williams family gathered inside Lorraine's enormous colonial-style home. Crystal chandeliers, imported china, gold-rimmed glasses that nobody was allowed to touch before she sat down. Everything looked expensive. Everything felt cold. She loved seating arrangements. She intentionally placed me at the far end of the table, almost as though I were an invited stranger. Brandon never questioned it. "It's just Mom's tradition," he'd always say. I stopped arguing. People often ask why women stay silent in families that constantly humiliate them. The answer isn't weakness. It's exhaustion. You keep hoping kindness will eventually be noticed. You convince yourself tomorrow will be different. You believe one more sacrifice might finally earn acceptance. I believed all of those lies. One Sunday, Lorraine served roasted lamb. As everyone complimented dinner, she looked directly at me. "Naomi, since teachers have so much free time during summer, maybe you can learn to cook properly?" The table erupted in laughter. I smiled. Because smiling required less energy than crying. Brandon squeezed my hand beneath the table. Not to defend me. To tell me not to respond. That hurt more. Another Sunday. She handed everyone expensive Christmas gifts. Designer watches. Luxury handbags. Vacation vouchers. When she reached me, she smiled proudly and handed me a cookbook called Cooking for Beginners. Again. Everyone laughed. I thanked her. because that's what survival looked like. The strange part? I wasn't poor. I simply wasn't obsessed with showing wealth. My father had raised me differently. His name was Elijah Carter, a quiet engineer who believed humility outlasted luxury. After Mom passed away, Dad and I became inseparable. He rarely spoke about his work. Whenever I asked, he'd simply smile. I solved problems. Nothing more. When I married Brandon, Dad congratulated us warmly but kept some distance from the Williams family. I assumed personalities simply didn't match. Now I know. He saw things I refused to see. 6 months before the dinner that changed everything, Dad passed away peacefully in his sleep. It shattered me. For weeks, I couldn't play piano without crying. Brandon comforted me at first. Then life returned to normal for everyone except me. Grief doesn't follow calendars. It follows memories. Every time I saw an old toolbox, every time I smelled cedar wood, every time jazz played softly in grocery stores, I missed him all over again. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, while organizing my classroom after dismissal, my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally I ignored those. Something told me not to. Ms. Naomi Carter? Speaking. My name is Victor Reynolds. His voice carried unusual calmness. I'm calling from Reynolds and Whitmore International Law. I believe we've been trying to reach you. Yes? There has been an important development concerning your father's estate. I frowned. My father's estate was settled months ago. A long silence followed. Then, I'm afraid that's only what you were meant to believe. The room suddenly felt smaller. What do you mean? Miss Carter, your father instructed us to contact you only after several legal conditions had been fulfilled. I'd appreciate meeting you today. 3 hours later, I entered one of Atlanta's tallest office buildings. The reception area overlooked nearly the entire city. Everything inside whispered quiet wealth. No flashy decorations, just confidence. Victor Reynolds greeted me personally, gray-haired, perfectly tailored suit, gentle eyes. He shook my hand. Your father spoke about you often. That nearly broke me. Inside the conference room waited 4 additional attorneys. Stacks of documents covered the polished walnut table. Victor sat down. Naomi, what I'm about to tell you will sound impossible. I laughed nervously. My week has already been impossible. He opened a thick leather folder. Your father wasn't only an engineer. He founded Carter Global Infrastructure. I blinked. I'm sorry. What? He slid photographs toward me. Oil platforms, airports, solar fields, high-speed rail projects across multiple continents. Each image carried one familiar name. Carter. Victor continued calmly. Your father built one of the world's largest privately held infrastructure groups. I stared at him. No, there must be another Elijah Carter. There isn't. He gently pushed another document toward me. My father's signature. Real. Authentic. Every childhood memory suddenly rearranged itself. The frequent overseas trips. The private phone calls. The unusual security around certain business meetings. The simple clothes. The old pickup truck. It had all been intentional. He had hidden an empire beneath ordinary living. Victor looked directly into my eyes. Following the final execution of his international trust, you are now the sole controlling beneficiary. My heartbeat echoed inside my ears. I don't understand. Understand what? The estimated value, he paused, currently exceeds $50 billion. Silence, absolute silence. I laughed, then cried, then laughed again. This isn't funny. It isn't. I teach second graders. I rent a modest house. I drive a 7-year-old Honda. Victor smiled sadly. Your father wanted exactly that. He believed character develops before privilege. Hours disappeared beneath paperwork. Security briefings, confidentiality agreements, introductions to financial advisors, corporate governance, international holdings. It felt unreal. Before leaving, Victor handed me a handwritten envelope. Dad, he asked us to give you this today. My hands trembled as I unfolded the letter. My sweet Naomi, if you're reading this, then I'm finally gone. Forgive me for hiding this from you. Money attracts people who love wealth more than people. I wanted someone to love you before they knew what you owned. Never confuse kindness with weakness. And never stay where your dignity is the price of belonging. Love. Dad. Tears blurred every word. Especially that last sentence. Never stay where your dignity is the price of belonging. I folded the letter carefully. Those words would soon become the most important advice I'd ever received. That evening happened to be Sunday. Family dinner. I considered canceling. Instead, something inside me whispered, "Go," not because they deserved my presence, because I deserved to see them clearly. For the first time, without fear, without needing approval, I slipped Dad's letter into my purse, started my old Honda, and drove toward the Williams estate. I had no intention of mentioning the inheritance. Not yet. I wanted one ordinary evening, one chance to observe people exactly as they had always been, without money changing their masks. I didn't realize the masks were already beginning to fall. As I pulled into the circular driveway, I noticed several unfamiliar luxury cars parked outside. Inside the mansion, voices echoed louder than usual. Laughter. Champagne glasses. Celebration. Brandon opened the front door before I reached it. His smile looked forced. "You're late." I came straight from work. He glanced behind him nervously before lowering his voice. "Mom's already irritated." I looked into his eyes. "Is she ever anything else?" He sighed instead of answering. That told me everything. When we stepped into the dining room, every seat was already filled. Lorraine looked up slowly. Her expression hardened the moment she saw me. There she is. Our guest of honor finally decided ordinary people were worth her time. Several relatives chuckled. I apologized politely and took my seat. Something felt different. Everyone kept exchanging strange glances, as though they already knew something I didn't. Then Lorraine stood, lifted her wine glass, and smiled. "I've prepared a little surprise tonight." The room instantly grew quiet. Brandon lowered his eyes. No one looked surprised. Only me. And for the first time, I realized this evening had been planned long before I arrived. Lorraine slowly circled the table, her crystal wine glass raised high. "Before we eat," she announced, "I'd like to recognize someone very special." The room erupted into applause. I looked around, assuming she was honoring one of the grandchildren. Instead, Lorraine stopped directly behind my chair. "Naomi." She smiled. The kind of smile that never reached her eyes. "You've been part of this family for years, yet somehow you've never learned your place." The laughter that followed wasn't loud. It was worse. It was comfortable. People laughed because they expected everyone else to laugh. Brandon shifted uneasily beside me. "Mom?" Lorraine raised one finger. "Don't interrupt." She leaned toward me. "You embarrass my son. You dress like a school teacher. You drive that little Honda. You never fit into this family." Then she clapped twice. A housekeeper carried out a large serving platter. "I thought tonight we'd finally teach you some manners." Before I could react, Lorraine tipped the entire platter over my head. Hot rice, vegetables, sauce. Everything crashed onto my hair, shoulders, and dress. The room froze for barely a second. Then, laughter exploded. Some covered their mouths. Others openly pointed. A cousin pulled out his phone before his wife pushed it back down. An uncle slapped the table, laughing so hard tears rolled down his face. Someone whispered, "She actually deserved that." I slowly wiped sauce from my face. Not because I was angry, because I wanted to see everyone clearly. Every face, every expression. Dad's letter echoed inside my mind. "Never stay where your dignity is the price of belonging." Lorraine folded her arms proudly. "So, aren't you going to apologize?" I looked at her calmly. "For what?" "For embarrassing this family." I glanced around the room. "No." The laughter stopped. My voice remained steady. "I've apologized for existing long enough." Brandon finally spoke. "Naomi, please don't make this worse." I turned toward him. "Worse? You watched your mother humiliate your wife. And your concern is the dinner?" He couldn't answer. For the first time in our marriage, I saw him exactly as he was. Not cruel, not evil, just unwilling to stand up when it mattered. Sometimes silence hurts more than insults. I stood. Food slid from my dress onto the expensive hardwood floor. Lorraine smirked. "Sit down. We're not finished." I smiled gently. "No, I think we are." She laughed. "You'll leave with nothing." I looked directly into her eyes. "I didn't come here to take anything. I came to see the truth." The room became uncomfortably quiet. I removed my wedding ring. Not dramatically. Simply, I placed it beside my untouched plate. Brandon stared. "What are you doing?" I'm choosing myself. His face turned pale. Naomi, don't do this. I've done enough. You've watched me get insulted for years. You asked me to keep the peace. But peace built on humiliation isn't peace. It's surrender. No one spoke. Even Lorraine seemed surprised. She had expected tears. Not calm. I picked up my purse. As I reached the doorway, my phone vibrated. Victor Reynolds, I answered. Miss Carter. His voice remained composed. The board has unanimously approved tomorrow's announcement. Are you comfortable proceeding? Yes, I am. We've also completed background. Investigations on parties connected to your personal life. I stopped walking. What do you mean? There were multiple attempts over the years to gain information about your father's assets. My heart skipped. By whom? Victor hesitated. I'd rather discuss that privately tomorrow. But I believe you deserve to know. Some requests originated from members of the Williams family. I slowly turned around. Nobody knew what Victor had just said. But suddenly, so many strange moments finally made sense. The endless questions about my father's finances. Lorraine asking whether Dad owned property. Her curiosity whenever he traveled overseas. She hadn't disliked me because I was poor. She had been searching for money that she believed didn't exist. Victor continued. Your father anticipated this possibility years ago. He documented everything. I'll show you tomorrow. The call ended. I looked back toward the dining room. Lorraine folded her arms. What now? Another excuse? I smiled. No, I was simply reminded of something my father taught me. She rolled her eyes. And what's that? Character always introduces itself eventually. I walked out. No shouting. No revenge speech. Just peace. For the first time in years. The next morning, I entered Carter Global Infrastructure's headquarters through a private entrance. Employees lined the hallway. Not because they knew me personally, because they were welcoming the company's new chairwoman. I still struggled to believe it. Victor introduced me to executives from around the world. Engineers, economists, legal advisors, community leaders. The company wasn't famous for luxury. It was famous for rebuilding roads after hurricanes, constructing hospitals, funding schools, and investing in clean energy. Dad hadn't built an empire for headlines. He had built it to solve problems. Exactly as he always said, I solve problems. Now I finally understood. During the board meeting, Victor placed another folder before me. Inside were private investigators' reports, emails, financial records, old correspondence. For years, Lorraine had quietly hired people to investigate my father. She had assumed he was secretly wealthy. But because Dad lived so modestly, every investigation concluded the same thing. Middle-class engineer. Nothing more. She never found the truth. Dad had hidden everything behind international trusts and charitable foundations. Not because he distrusted me. Because he wanted to protect me. Victor looked at me. He once told me, if someone truly loves Naomi, they'll love her before they know who she is. Tears filled my eyes again. 2 weeks later, my attorney filed for divorce. I requested only what belonged to me before the marriage. No revenge. No demand for Brandon's assets. Just freedom. Brandon called every day. I didn't answer. Eventually, he left a voicemail. I should have stood up for you. You were right. I was afraid of disappointing my mother. I ended up losing my wife. I listened once, then deleted it. Forgiveness doesn't always require reconciliation. Sometimes forgiveness simply means refusing to carry bitterness into your future. The Williams family learned the truth through a national business interview. The interviewer asked, "What inspired you to accept leadership of Carter Global Infrastructure?" I smiled. My father taught me that wealth means very little if it can't improve someone else's life. Within hours, every news outlet carried the story. The mysterious daughter, the hidden inheritance, the new chairwoman. My phone never stopped ringing. Lorraine called 17 times in one day. I never answered. Her lawyer eventually requested a meeting. I declined. Not because I hated her, because my peace was no longer negotiable. Over the next year, we launched scholarships for public school music teachers. We built community arts centers across underserved neighborhoods. We funded free music programs in hundreds of elementary schools. Children who could never afford instruments now played pianos, violins, and trumpets. Every ribbon-cutting ceremony reminded me of Dad. Real wealth wasn't measured in billions. It was measured in opportunities created for others. One afternoon, I visited Dad's favorite park, the same bench where we'd eaten ice cream when I was 10 years old. I unfolded his final letter again. This time, I didn't cry. I smiled. He had given me something greater than money. He had given me discernment, the ability to recognize love that asked nothing in return, and the courage to walk away from places where respect must be earned by suffering. Sometimes people believe justice looks like humiliation. It doesn't. Justice looks like healing. It looks like building a life so meaningful that yesterday's insults no longer define tomorrow. The dinner where they laughed at me became one of the greatest gifts of my life, because that night didn't reveal my worth. It revealed theirs. And once you truly see people for who they are, you're finally free to become who you were always meant to be. If this story made you think differently about self-worth, forgiveness, or courage, let me know what lesson stayed with you the most.